Welcome to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, Office of Museum Services Informational Video, Native American, Native Hawaiian Museum Services Grant Program, Applicant Information Session. The goal of this video is to provide an overview of our Native American, Native Hawaiian Museum Services Grant Program, which we call NANH for short, and the process of preparing an application for funding. This video is organized into 6 chapters. What is the Native American, Native Hawaiian Museum Services Grant Program? This section explains the purpose and eligibility criteria of the NANH grant program. What can NANH grants fund? This section explains the types of projects that can be funded in NANH and the amounts of funds that can be requested. Application components, overview. This section describes the types of documents that are needed to create an NANH grant application. Application components, narrative. This section provides guidance on composing the narrative part of your application. Application components, budget, provides details on the information to include in your project budget. And application tips and next steps is our concluding section to provide a few tips and next steps. The complete set of instructions for how to prepare and submit an NANH grant application can be found in the Notice of Funding Opportunity published on grants.gov and available on the IMLS website. Please refer to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the most detailed information to prepare your application. To get the most out of this video, we recommend that you watch it in its entirety. This will give you an understanding of the NANH grant program, the types of projects that can be funded, and the necessary application components. You may also want to review the NANH Notice of Funding Opportunity before, during, or after you watch this video. Notices of Funding Opportunities, also called NOFOs for short, are documents that detail the requirements of each of our grant programs for fiscal year 2024. All of our NOFOs can be found via imls.gov/grants. As you navigate the application process, you can use this video as a reference tool. If you'd like to skip to a specific section, please use the time bar below or the links in the description box to navigate the chapters. What is NANH? In this section, we will answer that question and provide information on the purpose and intent of this grant program and who it is designed to serve. The overall goal of the NANH grant program is to build the capacity of Native American tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations to provide museum services to their communities in order to help their heritage, culture, and knowledge thrive. Some, but not all, of the ways tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations might do this are through exhibitions, educational services and programs, professional development, and collection stewardship. It's important to note, however, that applicants do not have to have a physical museum or cultural center constructed in order to provide museum services to your communities. The NANH program has unique eligibility criteria from other museum grant programs offered at IMLS. Specifically, in order to be eligible for an award under this program, the legal applicant must be either a federally recognized Indian tribe, an Alaska Native village or corporation, or a nonprofit organization that primarily serves and represents Native Hawaiians. Definitions of eligible tribal organizations can be found on our IMLS eligibility criteria webpage linked here, or within the Notice of Funding Opportunity for this program. In most circumstances, other entities such as museums, libraries, cultural centers, schools, tribal colleges, or departments of education are not eligible to apply on their own. However, the 3 types of eligible entities listed here are welcome to partner with non-eligible entities or organizations. The applicant for the grant must meet the eligibility criteria, but the partners aren't required to do so. In this section, we will answer the question, what can NANH fund? Providing details on the types of projects and objectives within the NANH grant program, as well as offer some summary data on the number and type of NANH projects that were funded last year. NANH grants are designed to support project-based activities. So let's take a minute to consider exactly what that means. The Project Management Institute has a good definition, which is a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. A project is temporary because it has a defined beginning and end in time, and therefore defined scope and resources. And a project is unique in that it's not a routine operation or general operating support, for example, but rather a specific set of activities designed to accomplish a singular goal. We recommend that you keep this definition in mind as you conceptualize your NANH project. Think of it as a temporary, non-routine set of activities which collectively have a beginning and an end in time, a defined scope requiring specific resources, and which are designed to accomplish a specific singular goal. How long can your NANH project last? Your schedule of completion must be at least 1 year, but no more than 3 years in length. Keeping our focus on project-based activities, let's look a little closer at what characteristics are most often seen in successful NANH applications. First, institutional impact. Your project should address a key need or challenge that faces your tribe or organization. Second, in-depth knowledge. Your proposal should reflect a thorough understanding of current practice and knowledge about the subject matter. Third, project-based design. Your work plan should consist of a set of logical, interrelated activities tied directly to addressing the key need or challenge that you've identified. And fourth, demonstrable results. Your project should generate measurable results that tie directly back to the need or challenge it was designed to address. It has been our experience that unfunded applications fail to deliver convincingly on one or more of these areas, so it's a good idea to make sure your application shows how your project will be strong in each. Still keeping that concept of project in mind, let's turn to the program goal and its associated objectives. You should align your proposed project with one or more of these objectives and clearly identify which one or ones you have chosen in your application narrative. This goal and these objectives may seem broad, and that's on purpose. You only need to choose the one that is the best fit or most closely aligned with the key need or challenge you plan to address in your project. This slide shows a list of some of the types of projects we can fund under the NANH program, and we invite you to develop and apply for projects that best meet your tribe's or institution's needs. Again, you're not necessarily required to have a physical museum or cultural center established in order to provide these types of services. Whatever activities you have in mind, you should make sure to describe them thoroughly and show how they will logically progress to meet your chosen objective. You should be cautious about trying to cram too many different types of activities into the same proposal. Just because they all might fit under the overarching goal of the NANH program to help you provide museum services to your communities to promote heritage, culture, and knowledge, doesn't mean you should try to do them all at once. We often call those kitchen sink projects. You can certainly have a project that is multifaceted or that has multiple complementary components if that's what makes the most sense for you and your goals. However, the strongest proposals are clearly defined projects with logical, interrelated activities that have manageable scopes, budgets, and timelines. If you're not sure about which project objective or objectives are the best fit for your particular project, keeping in mind that you may choose more than one, but then you must address each in your narrative, here are some more ways to think about them. For projects focused on preserving and perpetuating native language or traditional cultural practices, make sure you think through who your target audiences are and what their needs are. What do you want them to learn or accomplish, and what's the best way to go about that? For professional development and capacity building, what does a successful outcome look like for your tribe or institution? Is it recruiting and training more staff? Is it enhancing technology, such as your website or upgrading your software? Just remember that general operating support is not something we can fund. For projects focused on collections or conservation, we often encourage a step-by-step approach. This means assessing needs, creating a prioritized list of activities, and following through by doing the most important and logical things first. Think carefully about what is in the center of your project and who will benefit from your work. NANH supports projects of all sizes, but there is a specific range of funding available in this program. You can request a minimum of $5,000 up to a maximum of $250,000 in federal funds. If you ask for less than $5,000 or more than $250,000 in federal grant funds, your application may be rejected and not reviewed. Remember to keep your budget aligned to the scope and scale of your project, including all costs necessary to complete the proposed activities. In the NANH grant program, project budgets are not required to have any non-federal cost share, although you may include it if your organization will contribute funds towards your particular project. Cost share is not considered in the review of NANH applications. It's also important to note that if you decide to include a cost share in your application, it must be met by the end of the award. We will hold you to that figure, so keep that in mind when applying. Cost share may be in the form of cash, staff or volunteer time, or third-party contributions. It may not include funds from another federal source. There's no limit to the number of applications you can submit in response to the FY24 funding announcement for the NANH program. However, if you do submit multiple applications, they must be for separate and discrete projects, meaning they must not overlap in terms of staffing or costs. For example, you could submit a proposal to support your native language revitalization programs, as well as a separate proposal to inventory and rehouse your museum collection. You'll want to consider your organization's capacity, not just to write and submit multiple strong proposals, but then to manage multiple federal awards at once. Demonstrating that you have the internal administrative and financial controls necessary to track and maintain multiple federal awards simultaneously will be important. The amount of applications we receive varies from year to year, and the number of awards we make is dependent on how much funding is appropriated by Congress for the program each year. Here's a snapshot of our most recent award cycle. In FY23, IMLS funded 35 out of 36 eligible applications, awarding $3.772 million. This was the largest amount allocated for this program since it was founded in 2005. The funded awards represent 18 Native American tribes based in 7 states, 4 Alaska Native villages and corporations, and 12 Native Hawaiian organizations. 8 of these 35 awards, or 23%, were from first-time applicants to the NANH program. On the IMLS website, you can use the Search Awarded Grants function to explore our archive of grants that we have awarded in past years. All 35 of the FY23 NANH awards announced in June are listed here, along with those from prior years. You can search this database using a variety of criteria, such as institution name, location, and keyword. Your search will retrieve basic information about each award, including the amount of federal funds awarded and a brief description of the proposed activities and expected results for each project. We have also posted some examples of successful application narratives from recent years on our website. To find these, go to the Sample Applications page on the IMLS website and scroll down the page to find the NANH examples. Looking at these proposals might help you clarify your thinking about your own project. In this section, we will introduce the components of an NANH grant application and provide an overview about the required, conditionally required, and supporting documents. The NANH Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFO, includes a complete list of all the application components starting on page 6. The table of application components lists which application documents are required, conditionally required, or optional. Aside from the SF424S and the IMLS Museum Program Information Form, which are both completed as fillable forms within the grants.gov workspace, the rest of the application components must be created by you, the applicant, and saved as PDF documents to be uploaded as part of your application package in grants.gov. These are the required documents. All applicants and applications must include the documents listed here. Omission of even just one might result in your application's rejection. Also important to note, there is a 7-page limit for the narrative. If you exceed the page limit specified in the NOFO, we must remove the extra pages before your application goes out for review. That means your reviewers may well see a paragraph or sentence cut off in midair and will wonder about your organizational skills and your attentiveness to detail, not to mention any information contained within those excess pages won't be visible to them. So make sure your content fits into the page limit specified and double check the number of pages is still correct after you convert your document to a PDF. The second category of application components is that of conditionally required documents. Some applicants must include 1, 2, or all of these, and it's important that you know which are required for your application. If you are a nonprofit organization that primarily serves and represents Native Hawaiians, then you must include your proof of nonprofit status issued by the IRS, as well as appropriate proof of eligibility documentation as outlined in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. If you're using a federally negotiated indirect cost rate in your budget, then you must include a copy of your current final rate agreement. If you create digital products during the course of your project, then you must complete and submit a digital products plan. And if you are requesting support for conservation treatments or for collections objects, then you must include detailed condition reports and/or formal conservation treatment proposals. Just like the required documents, omission of even one of these can result in the exclusion of your application from further consideration. And please note that the term digital product includes any digitized and born digital content, resources or assets, software, or research data. So if you are creating any of these types of materials, you must include the plan with your application. The third group of application components is supporting documents. And here's a partial list of examples. Supporting documents are optional. You may submit some or none. We urge you to make good decisions here and include those that will supplement your proposal. This is not the place to introduce brand new information. Rather, as the name suggests, they should lend support to your project justification, work plan, and intended results that you've already spelled out in your application narrative. For example, have you identified a partner whose involvement is key to the project's success? If so, a letter of support or commitment would go a long way to reassuring reviewers that they are on board and the project will succeed. Pictures can help give reviewers who may not be familiar with your institution's programs, collections, or community a better idea of what you're describing within your narrative. Vendor quotes or equipment specifications show that you've done some of the legwork in getting appropriate estimates for project costs. We recommend that you be respectful of your reviewer's time and avoid any temptation to include hundreds of pages of extraneous material, especially if it's not directly related and relevant to your project. Being judicious really does work to your benefit. Supporting documents can make or break an application. So include what is important and helpful and stop there. In the following sections of this presentation, we will focus on 2 key application components, the project narrative and the project budget. Refer to the NOFO for complete instructions on how to prepare and complete all of the application components. In this section, we'll go over the questions you will need to answer your project narrative and offer details on the review criteria associated with each section: project justification, project work plan, and project results. The narrative is the heart of your proposal, and the Notice of Funding Opportunity provides lengthy guidance on what it should cover and how it should be formatted. The first section is your project justification. This section should clearly identify which program objective or objectives your project supports, as well as how it will support the overall NANH program goal of strengthening your tribe's or organization's ability to provide museum services to your communities. What need, problem, or challenge will your project address, and how was it identified? Describe how you've used demographic information, economic circumstances, condition assessments, and other relevant data from reliable sources to define the need, problem, or challenge and develop the scope for the project. Who is the target audience or target group for your project, and how have they been involved in the planning? Target group refers to those who will most immediately and positively be affected by your project. Identify the number of individuals in the target group or in each target group if you have more than one. And who are the ultimate beneficiaries for this project? Beneficiaries refers to those who are likely to be aided in the long term by your project. They may or may not be the same as your target group. Identify the number of individuals who will benefit from your project in the long term, if reliable and defensible counts are possible. Otherwise, describe the characteristics of the beneficiaries you expect to be served eventually by your project. In Section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity, under Review Criteria, you will find a list of questions that reviewers are asked to answer when they review your proposal. It's a good idea to refer to these as you write your narrative to be certain you are providing your reviewers with clear, solid information. You will see that they correspond fairly directly with the prompts that you're given to write in your narrative. One of the prompts in the project justification section of the narrative is the identification of the need, problem, or challenge your project addresses. It is foundational in your application, so keep these points in mind. The federal government wants its investment to result in something getting better. As you define your need, problem, or challenge, articulate what will get better as a result of your project as precisely as possible. Will someone learn something, develop a skill, change an attitude? Will members of your community be better able to work together to solve problems? Will collections be better cared for? Will their lifespan be extended? Will access to your collections and the information surrounding them be expanded? Identify why it is important that this particular change happens. In other words, why should we care? Hone your problem definition carefully in clear, succinct terms, and gather and present data that supports your problem's definition. If the project justification section was the why, the project work plan section is where you identify the who, what, when, and how. Who will do what activities when and using what resources. You should explain how you will track your progress towards achieving your intended results and what you'll do if you need to correct course. You should also think about risks that are inherent in your particular project and tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. I'll say more about risks in a few minutes. Remember, your project must be at least 1 year, 12 months, and up to 3 years, 36 months in length. Again, this is the list of questions that reviewers are asked to answer for this section when they review your proposal. So make sure your narrative is answering these effectively. Remember, the people reading and scoring your application may not be familiar with your specific history, institution, collection, etc. So don't be vague. You want to provide enough detail to reassure them that your project is manageable and can be accomplished with the staff time and resources allocated. Your work plan will be built on activities, so it's important to be clear about what an activity is. An activity is something that someone does. It has a beginning and an end, just like projects. And you know when you finished it because it doesn't need to be done anymore. It's no longer on your to-do list. An activity is not a goal, a result, or an outcome. Rather, it's something you do as part of striving to achieve those. Aim for a reasonable level of detail in identifying your activities. Too much and your work plan becomes bogged down and confusing, but too little and someone who's reading your application won't understand the who, when, what, and how of your project. You should aim for a balance. We also ask that you think about risks that are inherent in your particular project and tell us how you've taken those into account in your planning. Think of it as answering the question, what if X doesn't go according to plan? There is no checklist of risks, but every project has them. The best proposals will show that you're aware of the risks and have thought through a plan for dealing with them. Look at your activities and think about what could go wrong. Focus on the ones where your experience tells you, yes, that could happen, and identify steps you would take in response. We know things often go differently than expected. We just want you to prepare by identifying implementable options. And here are some examples of types of risks. If you intend to hire someone into a grant-funded position to work on the project activities, what will you do if it takes longer than expected to find the right candidate, bring them on board, and train them? Another example, a project depends on your community partners to achieve success. But what if a partner becomes unavailable? What do you do now? And finally, a project involving rehousing collections into new museum quality storage might run into delays in the delivery of the cabinets. So what happens to the collection items then? How will you ensure that they remain safe and secure? The third section of your narrative should be devoted to articulating your intended project results. This is your chance to convince the reviewers that the activities you've spelled out in your project work plan will result in something getting better. The need or problem you identified in your project justification will be diminished or eliminated altogether. This section should logically tie the narrative together by explaining how you will know that your project has been successful and how you will measure project success. If your project will generate tangible products, and most do, here's the opportunity to describe them and make the case that they will be useful. Remember that digital products plan I mentioned as a supporting document can be useful to expand on this section if it's applicable. Last but not least, we ask that you tell us how you will sustain the benefit of the project. How will this improvement that you propose to make continue once your grant is over? What will the longer term impacts be? And again, here's the list of questions that reviewers are asked to answer when they read the project results section of your narrative. Again, these are found in section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. We often hear that defining intended results and success measures is challenging for applicants, so it's worth spending a little bit of time on this here. Essentially, we are asking you to explain what will be better as a result of this project and how will you know. Think back to the questions we referenced in the project justification section when we talked about defining the need, problem, or challenge that your project is addressing and how it fits into one or more of the program objectives. Your results should tie back directly and logically to those elements. If you said someone will learn something, how will you show that? If your problem is related to the preservation of traditional cultural practices, how will you know when that's been successfully achieved? If you're saying collections will be better cared for, how will you be sure and how will you measure better? If you're digitizing to expand accessibility, how will you know when you've successfully done it? You may think of tangential benefits or general positive outcomes, but make sure you identify them as in addition to and not instead of your original intended results. Reviewers are otherwise likely to catch that as a disconnect. So you should be specific and refrain from broad, vague, or unrealistic claims. This focus on project results and measuring success in meaningful ways is not new, but it isn't necessarily easy either. There are many ways to measure success, and each situation and project is unique. To aid you in visualizing what success could look like for your project, we encourage you to use or consider using a logic model or evaluation tool to explain your intended results and your plan for achieving them. And there are numerous examples and downloadable worksheets that you can find with a simple internet search. So to recap, your narrative has 3 sections: project justification, project work plan, and project results, and you have 7 pages for it. The sections are all equally important and should all logically tie together. Please write clearly, address what we asked you to address, and keep an eye on those review criteria. We're telling you exactly what the reviewers will look for, so make it easy for them to find it and understand it. In this section, We will provide information on what to include in your project budget and budget justification, and provide some examples of allowable and unallowable costs. Your budget is a critically important component of your application. This is where you specify all of the costs associated with your proposed project. The budget consists of two required documents, the IMLS budget form and the corresponding budget justification. The IMLS budget form is a fillable PDF that accommodates up to 3 years of project activities and expenses. The budget should include the project costs that will be charged to grant funds, as well as those that will be supported by cost share, if applicable. All of the items listed, whether supported by grant funds or cost share, must be necessary to accomplish project objectives, allowable according to the applicable federal cost principles, auditable, and incurred during the award period of performance. The IMLS budget form can be downloaded directly from the IMLS website and is linked within the Notice of Funding Opportunity. As you develop your budget, keep in mind that there are certain costs that are either allowable or unallowable according to federal regulations. The allowability of a cost item for all federal grants is specified in the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, sometimes referred to 2 CFR 200 for short, but the full title is Title II, Subtitle A, Chapter 2, Part 200, Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. Yes, that is a mouthful, but these regulations contain important guidance that all federal grant applications and recipients should be aware of. Using 2 CFR 200 as a basis, we've developed a short list of allowable costs that are common to IMLS projects. These costs may be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for with federal funds, or what you will pay for as part of your cost share, again, if you include any. The rules about allowability apply equally to both. So when completing your project budget, be sure to check that all the costs you include, whether grant funds or cost share, are allowable. There are also some costs that are unallowable according to the federal regulations in 2 CFR 200. Unallowable costs may not be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for with federal funds, nor can they be part of what you will pay for as part of your cost share. Unallowable expenses cannot show up anywhere in your proposal. As you prepare your application, it's a good idea to compare your list of proposed expenses against these sample lists of allowable and unallowable costs and against the federal cost principles. If after that you have specific questions about allowability of certain costs, please contact us and we'll be happy to help. In addition to the IMLS budget form, you must also prepare a budget justification. This is an opportunity to provide an explanation and justification for the project costs in a more detailed narrative format. The budget justification should correspond with the cost categories in the IMLS budget form. In the justification, you will identify each expense and show the method of cost computation used to determine each dollar amount, including any that you may have consolidated or summarized on the IMLS budget form. In other words, please show and please double check your math. For example, in the section Salaries and Wages, you should identify each person whose salary or wages will be paid with IMLS funds or by cost share, provide their names, and describe their role in the project. Document the method of cost computation by including the base salary or wages for each person and the percentage of time each person is allocated to the project activities. And that can be shown as a percentage of time or a number of days or a number of hours or whatever makes sense. If cost share is being provided by unpaid volunteers, explain how you arrived at the dollar amount used to represent the value of their services. In the section for supplies, materials, and equipment, you should list each type of supply, material, or equipment you propose to purchase or provide as cost share for the project. Detail the number and unit cost for each item and explain how you arrived at the dollar amounts. You should also provide vendor quotes or price lists as supporting documents with your application. In this final section of our presentation, We will offer some application tips and next steps based on our experiences with the NANH application submission process each year. We can only make grants to eligible applicants that submit complete applications, including all attachments, on or before the deadline. So here are some tips to help you do just that. Start early. Do not try to pull together an entire application within 3 days. Become familiar with grants.gov's workspace. It has many useful features, including upfront validation, which allows you to correct errors prior to submission, and the opportunity to collaborate with others in creating your application. If you're not used to working with grants.gov, consider starting with the workspace overview and check out their tutorials. Make sure you're looking at and applying to the correct grant program within grants.gov. You can do a keyword search for the IMLS Native American Native Hawaiian Museum Services Program, or you can enter the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, CFDA, number, which is 45.308. Be sure your application is complete. Double check it against the table of application components in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And make sure all of those application components are in the proper PDF format and follow the correct naming conventions. And finally, please submit to grants.gov early so you can correct any errors and avoid any issues created by slow internet or other technology challenges. It's important to get your application submitted online through grants.gov before the deadline. IMLS does not accept applications by mail or email, and nor do we accept late applications. In order to register with grants.gov, you must have an active SAM.gov registration and unique entity identifier number. So make sure your registrations for both of these sites are complete, your accounts are active, and that any necessary passwords are current. These registrations expire periodically, so do not wait until it's time to hit the submit button to check on them. You should coordinate with any other staff members or departments, such as your authorized organization representative or your financial or grants office, who may hold the accounts and passwords you'll need to submit. If you've had staff turnover in the past year, that might be a flag to double check who has access to these accounts. Both the SAM.gov and grants.gov websites have robust help features and FAQs. If you run into technical issues with either of these sites, you should reach out to their help desks and request a tracking, case, or ticket number in order to document your issue and attempts at resolving it. IMLS does not accept failure to have an active SAM.gov or grants.gov registration by the deadline as an excuse for submitting a late application. So again, please start early. Peer reviewers, who are museum professionals with experience working in or with tribal, Alaskan, and Native Hawaiian communities, will be selected by IMLS to read each application and provide constructive and critical comments on the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed projects. They are instructed to base their reviews only on the information contained within the application. So don't assume that a reviewer or IMLS will know anything about your museum or your proposed project. To help make sure your narrative is as clear and complete as possible, you should revisit the NANH Notice of Funding Opportunity and follow the narrative outline it provides and make sure you address each prompt. Be sure to consider those review criteria associated with each section of the narrative. Please use the headings, subheadings, or numbered sections in your narrative to make it easier for the reviewers to read. Avoid generalities, acronyms, and jargon. The people who will review your application are museum professionals, but they may not be familiar with your particular field's or tribe's shorthand or acronyms. So make it easy for them to understand what you mean. An advantage to starting your application early is you can ask a colleague or a friend to review everything with fresh eyes before you submit. Ask them to act like a reviewer who's seeing this for the first time and doesn't know any background information about your project or your institution. Remember to limit your narrative to 7 pages, and please try to stick to the recommended page limits for the other application components. Applications must be received through grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on November 15th, 2023. This date is non-negotiable. The timestamp is auto-generated by the grants.gov system, and we have no ability to override it. And that is why we say repeatedly to start early and submit your application early. That way, if you encounter a difficulty of any kind when you're submitting your proposal, you'll have some time to resolve the problem and resubmit. After the application deadline, IMLS staff will review your application for completeness and eligibility, and you will hear from us via email if there's any issues there. Next, peer reviewers will read your applications and provide scores and comments based on the criteria outlined in the NOFO. IMLS staff will closely review your project budget and your track record with past and current grants. We then prepare all of the application materials for review by the IMLS Deputy Director for Museums and the IMLS Director. By law, the IMLS Director is charged with the authority and responsibility to make final award decisions. This typically happens by the end of May. So it's about a 6-month turnaround time from when you submit your proposal to when you'll hear if you've been awarded. In June 2024, we will notify you by email of the award decisions and provide the scores and comments generated by the reviewers. And NANH projects must be scheduled to start on July 1st, 2024, and again, they can last from 1 to 3 years. Please make sure everyone involved in preparing your grant application is aware of those dates and deadlines. As you read through the NOFO and prepare your application, you might have additional questions come up before the deadline. IMLS staff can help answer your questions about this or any other museum grant program. You may contact us by email or phone. Contact information is listed on the NANH grant program landing page on the IMLS website. You can also schedule a counseling call to meet virtually with program staff. Use the scheduling link found on the NANH program landing page to find and book an available time slot on our calendars. You will then receive an email with a calendar invite and a Microsoft Teams meeting link. Thank you very much for your interest in IMLS and in the Native American Native Hawaiian Museum Services funding opportunity. I hope you found the information in this video helpful. Good luck, and we look forward to seeing your application in November.